Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Black Hole. Today we have a panel discussion titled Enablers and Barriers, and we have a very distinguished panel of visitors from the UK who are working in the higher education sector in the United Kingdom. They are Madiha, Sajid, Dr. Adeela, Shafi, and Noshaba, Anbreen. The discussion will be moderated by Dr. Mariam Rab, and she will be talking to our distinguished panelists about their experiences in the higher education sector in the UK and how they can perhaps share their experiences with us and talk about how your experiences are relevant to the Pakistani context as well. So I'll hand over now to Dr. Mariam Rao.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Black Hole for hosting us today. It's a great opportunity for me to be here moderating this. So without further ado, I would just start with Dr. Adeela on if you could just introduce yourself and share a little bit about your journey in the UK University.
Sure, thank you very much. And again, delighted to be here with everyone today. And this is quite a unique experience, actually, to be sitting in Pakistan talking about our experiences in higher education. They often ask us in the UK as well, because it's quite unusual to find women academics in British universities, actually. But in answer to your question, my journey in academia, I often say to my students, actually, I'm one of those boring people that has always been in academia, and without giving away my age, I've been in academia for over 25 years. So that's all I know, actually. And in terms of the landscape, my brother teases me and says, "Tumhe aur kuch aata hi nahi, isliye you stayed in university." And I think I know a few people who've been accused of the same thing, that you don't know what else to do. So I found myself here in this journey, and like many other women, really, I've raised a family, I've got married, raised a family, alongside a full-time career, and that comes with its own particular and additional challenges. And in some ways, I'm no different to many women in the UK who also white British women who also have to take on caring responsibilities, and as a gender, really, across universities in the UK and no doubt here as well, we fall behind in our career development as we raise a family, and we don't face the same privileges that perhaps men, our contemporaries, might have because they don't have the same responsibilities. So the journey's been a challenging one, but despite that, I think there are a couple of things really that are quite important in terms of development and going forward. And the first thing I would say is yourself. आप खुद कैसे हैं, खुद कैसे progress करना चाहते हैं. And the second most important thing is actually those people around you that we sometimes don't give as much credit to. And I don't want to say that behind every successful woman there is a man, like they say for a woman, but actually there's always at least a group of people, because to enable you to be your best, it's nice to have people who encourage you, who enable you, and who are part of your journey. So you're not on your own. And in fact, you take, as a mother, actually you take everyone along with you. So the journey is not just mine. The journey is my entire family's. Because as I go further, so does everybody else. And कहते हैं ना कि, you educate a man and you educate a man, you educate a woman and you educate an entire community. And actually, I feel that's very true in my case, because I feel it's made a difference to my entire family. And I don't know if that's more than 2 minutes.
That's fine. I think that's going very well into the next question. But let's have Madiha's introduction.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Madiha. I'm born and raised in Pakistan for 20 years or so of my life until I got married. So Dil se Pakistani, always a passionate Pakistani at heart. I then moved to England after I got married, and I have spent about 16, 17 years over there. Professionally, I work at Imperial College London, and before that, I have worked at University College London. But I think that's the sort of the professional bit about me. My academic expertise, my professional expertise is women into leadership. It is about educational leadership. It is about equality and inclusion. And most importantly, it is about women who have caring responsibilities and how they progress into their journeys, how they progress as women into their careers, particularly women from a Pakistani heritage. And the reason for that is I have a wonderful daughter. Everything I do, it goes back to her, it links to her. She's become my inspiration because when I leave the world, I want to have done my bit to have made the world slightly better for her. This is my whole inspiration behind being into educational leadership. Other than that, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm an emergency driver, I'm my daughter's bank always, she spends money, then she wants that to be reimbursed. So being here today is a very unique opportunity for me to be able to share my journey, which is full of ups and downs, just like you, just like Adeela, just like Mariam, with everybody else, because I think there is a lot of value in shared experiences. There is a lot of value in honest reflections on what our journeys have been, and there is a lot to learn from each other. So I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion today.
Thank
Is
you
that
so
2
much.
minutes?
Yeah,
Cool.
that's-
Then over to
I'm
Noshaba.
not a good timekeeper though. Noshaba, over to you.
Brilliant. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to be here today. So my name is Noshaba Anbreen. Very different stage of my journey compared to the others joining me. So distinguished they are, but I'm relatively early career myself. So only my 4th year working in higher education. So I'm just going to restart at the beginning in terms of where I started my journey and how it led me into academia. I'm the only daughter. I have 2 brothers of a very working class Mirpuri family in Birmingham. Very proud Brummie, you can tell from my accent. So I'll try and pronounce my T's properly and be really succinct and fluent for you, okay? So Birmingham born and bred, lived there all my life. Believe it or not, this is the first time I've ever been to Pakistan. So when that plane landed, I was mega emotional. I really was. I actually cried, turned my head and had a few tears in my eyes. So I am a qualified science teacher. I did my bachelor's at the University of Birmingham in human biology. I went on to do a master's in education after my PGCE and secondary science education. So very much the same as colleagues here. I kind of went to university and then didn't want to leave. I'm currently pursuing my PhD in teacher education. I've actually been a teacher at high school, 11 to 19 age group, teaching science, so that's biology, chemistry, physics, GCSE and at A-level, and a bit of psychology as well. I didn't leave school because I was disillusioned with teaching. I actually was really sad because I love working with that age group. I absolutely loved every single minute of it. I spent 3 years in Qatar as the head of science in an international school, and I was headhunted by the very university that I attended for my bachelor's, master's, and my PhD, and they approached me and said, we'd like you to run a teacher training program at the University of Birmingham, which we are setting up a Dubai campus for. So that's been there for the last 4 years in the UAE, and I've been involved in that from the outset. So I run teacher training programs, a PGCE and a PGCEI at the University of Birmingham, Dubai, and I'm also involved in teacher education programs, so I run a master's in learning and teaching. As I said, I'm still pursuing my PhD, and that comes with its challenges as well. So my challenges are slightly different in terms of the recency of my career, but challenges nonetheless that I've faced. I'm learning a lot, I'm learning all the time, and I'm really privileged to be learning from such colleagues. So I'm really excited to talk to you about that.
Thank you so much, Noshaba. And I think I hold on to the mic because being the youngest and at the start of your career, I think let's talk about some barriers here. What are the cultural barriers that you experienced given your background of living in mini Pakistan, Birmingham, and also the community environment and everything? How was your journey, your entry into the education sector, higher education, and then going international? So if you could talk about some cultural barriers there. Thank you.
I want to start by saying that none of who I am today or where I am would have been possible if it wasn't for my parents. Mm-hmm. And alhamdulillah, I'm really get emotional, but I'm so grateful for the opportunities that they've afforded me. They gave me that freedom to make my own mistakes, they weren't as concerned more recently about log kya kahenge, like, you know, what people are going to say. It's very difficult as a single Pakistani woman to leave the country on your own, to move to another country, and to have done that twice in my academic career. Came with it some challenges, came with it its own set of questions. Family members asking, oh, no, she kahan gayi hai? Where has she gone? Kali gayi hai? I'm sorry, my Mirpri. I'm going to drop a few Mirpri words in. Yo, Mirpri, excellent representing. So they will, you know, say a couple of times, you know, akeli gayi hai, kali gayi hai, anybody with her? No, we've sent our daughter out on her own. We've equipped her, we've raised her as such that she can actually do this on her own, and we trust her, right? So, band kariga rakhenge na, if you keep someone locked up, they're going to want to escape. It's the truth, right? So if you give people freedom and equip them with the opportunities and trust that they're not going to make the mistakes that, you know, that you hear very much about, hopefully they make you proud. So challenges, definitely socio-culturally, family-wise, I've faced quite a few. And I still face them when I attend any shadi, any wedding, any matam or funeral. I'll still get the aunties coming up to me, you know, Beta, you really need to get married. You really need to stay at home with your parents. You really need to do this. And I'm like, actually, my parents are encouraging me to do my PhD. My parents are encouraging me to go further in higher education. And their opinion matters to me more than anything. And I'm being supported by like-minded colleagues. So I don't care what people think because I'm doing the right thing.
Thank you so much, Noshaba. And we'll move to Adeela here, who's working in University of Gloucestershire.
Yeah.
So cultural barriers for you, because that's very different from what probably Noshaba has experienced in Birmingham.
Yeah, absolutely. So I work in a university that is very white, middle class, so much more affluent, not many Pakistanis, in fact, hardly any Pakistanis. And I grew up in Bristol, born and brought up in Bristol, which is also not got too many Pakistanis either. So very much even an English environment was where we grew up. So we faced many challenges culturally because we were brought up within a fairly traditional Pakistani household. In a nuclear family, we didn't have many other people. So we didn't have very many people saying, log kya kahenge, kyunki gore to kuch kehte hi nahi hai. So we didn't have that problem. Unfortunately, my father didn't, like yours, didn't really want to be worried about what people thought so much. My mother did a little bit though. So a very different environment for sure. And our cultural challenges were initially trying to fit in and try and not be called, I don't know if you're allowed to say this, well, anyway, not to be allowed to be called negative names. So that was the biggest thing. We spent most of our time trying to fit in, and then you would come home. So we very much lived double lives, and this might be familiar to you as well, Anbreen, I'm not sure. So you were, when you went outside, you were like the Gore, you were like the English people. When you came home, you actually got changed and dressed into your shalwar kameez and you were Pakistani. And you thought like a Pakistani. So often we would be moving and switching between these two lives of being Pakistani and Englistani at the same time. And so when you'd go outside, you'd have to be like them because you needed to fit in. And inside, you had to deal with what your family and parents knew. And that was largely because they didn't know any different. So they were just trying to keep us safe. It got better as we got older because they realized that, you know, it's not all danger out there. So there was a lot of learning for us to have to do as British-born Pakistanis to retain our identity, but at the same time be successful, be accepted by wider society. So we faced many such challenges, and I talked about some of those this morning in our session, but I will mention another one that my brother often refers to in his Englistani and Pakistani mix. And often, you know, I don't know, but in English schools, if you don't look up at the teacher, make eye contact when they're telling you off, you're considered rude. But at home, if your father is telling you off, you look down. So he would get in trouble for making eye contact at home. And it's like, and at school they were saying, look up at us. And so he'd be going up, down. Where do I look and who do I do this with? But it was a classic sign of how we were trying to to get the right mix, actually, and who do we become? So one of the things that many British Pakistanis suffer from is an identity crisis. Certainly the ones who are of our generation had an identity crisis. You're not sure who you are. Where's your home? Pakistan, oh, they think you're English. You're in England, they think you're Pakistani. So who actually are you? Then you've got the Muslim mix thrown in as well. So quite a lot of things for us to deal with. And then as we became parents, we had to reconcile some of those tensions. So, and then on top of that, you're trying to have a career, perhaps a marriage, deal with in-laws and all sorts of things. So it's been quite a cocktail of challenges, and trying to navigate and get through those has been nothing short really of a miracle to come out the other end and still have some sanity and be able to sit in front of you, find people and talk about it. But actually now I can stand at this stage in my life and actually think that all of those challenges were good for me. And they shaped who I am. And now I can sit here and talk and share with you what I now feel is a unique privilege to be a British Pakistani, as a Muslim British Pakistani, because I've got insights as a Pakistani, so I can think like a Pakistani, remember the looking up and down, so I know how to do that, and I can think like an English, and I actually switch. When I'm with English people, I am English. Nobody knows the difference apart from the colour of my skin, because I talk like them, I walk like them, I think like them, and I can be, I think, quite Pakistani as well. And also we've got the Muslim sort of beating heart that we often have. So in the end, I think it's worked in my favour. So in terms of my children, we were having this discussion with them, that they also occupy a unique perspective, because they can do the same thing and you actually end up benefiting. So rather than seeing the glass as half full, half empty, see it as half full. See that you've actually got much more to offer than somebody who's completely Pakistani or completely English. And so, sorry, I know I've gone on and you're glaring at me. But that's a bit of the cultural barriers, of which there are many. I could share lots of stories.
And
एक story बता सकती हूँ.
I'm sure we'll have some more opportunity to do that. Thank you. So, Madiha, you moved to UK. So you have half of your life in Pakistan and then half in UK. And we are talking about 16, 17 years back, when the world was not this global. Internet was not that so let's talk about some cultural barriers that you had once you entered into that life, and then cultural barriers otherwise as well.
I think the biggest thing, the biggest cultural mindset when I went to the UK was, लोगों ने मुझे बताया कि they used to speak to me, and the first thing they would usually tell me is कि you speak good English, and they were very surprised at that. And that was a cultural shock to me. कि, what do you mean? Of course I speak good English. I've gone to convent, for crying out loud. I know more English than you do. My grammar is spot on. I make no spelling mistakes. I can write a fluent argument. I've been educated in English. I've studied everything. What do you mean I speak good English? Were you expecting otherwise? So the first cultural shock to me when I went to England was कि लोग पाकिस्तानियों से ये expect नहीं करते that we are actually very decent people. We are actually very intelligent, very educated people. And this is not road pe chalte hue log. This is a university level person I'm talking about. This was the first cultural stereotype that I faced. Or I am the person who likes to be challenged. So if you tell me you can't do this, I will go to the end of the world to make sure I do that, and I prove to you that I can do it. So when that person told me that you speak good English, and this is pretty much yehi tumhari, when I started off my career, it was in an administrative position, junior position. I was a young girl back then. And she told me that, तुम meetings में जाना सीख लो, तुम meeting के minutes लेना सीख लो, तुम agenda read करना सीख लो, तुम्हारे level पे यही ठीक है. And that one, and this is an American lady I'm talking about, that one sentence, that reflection के तुम English अच्छी बोलती हो, that gave me the impetus के, okay, now sit back, watch me where I go. Because that compelled me, that encouraged me, that gave me the impetus to go on, burn the barriers that people think about Pakistanis. मैंने अपने आप को हमेशा पाकिस्तान का flag bearer महसूस किया. Look at the green color I'm wearing today. And this is in recognition of Pakistan. And this is exactly what I have gone on to prove. And I know there's a very, very long journey for me to go, but culturally, what I feel the most important barrier is the overall impression of Pakistanis as a nation. And I want to prove to them we are hardworking, we are capable, we are intelligent, far more smart than they are. And the second cultural barrier I quickly want to turn towards is, unfortunately, England में जो Pakistani communities हैं, उनका एक specific thinking mindset बन गया है. And which is, we are not treated fairly, we are not treated equally, blah, blah, which is absolutely all true. I know Adeela will have more to say on that. We have got our obstacles, yes, we have got our challenges. But वो जो mindset है, वो वहाँ पे जाके stuck हो गया है. वो उन बैरियर्स को ओवरकम करने की जो कोशिश है वो मुझे नज़र नहीं आती है, वो मुझे स्ट्रेंथ नहीं नज़र आती है. ओके येस देयर इज़ एन इशू, देयर इज़ अ प्रॉब्लम, बट देन आर यू डूइंग एनीथिंग अबाउट इट? और मैं उन लोगों की बात कर रही हूँ जो वहाँ पे मेरे पाकिस्तानी सर्कल में मौजूद हैं, जो फैमिली फ्रेंड्स आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट मदर्स, आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट देयर चिल्ड्रन. सो इफ़ यू आर दे से व्हेन इन रोम डू एज द रोमन्स डू. So, right, you cannot change the system, but the least you can do is you can learn to communicate with the system, right? The least you can do when you are living in England, you can try to learn the language. But even if you are not making that effort, तो आपको Queen ने दावत तो नहीं दी थी आने के लिए. You made a decision to go to another country, to set up your life there. Then honor that decision and at least try to make some movement towards it. So these are the two main cultural reflections I have, one from the perspective of UK and one from the perspective of Pakistan. Thank you.
But yeah, let's talk about a little bit about workplace facilities, workplace and family responsibilities. Since you worked you mentioned caring as like following that as a specific sector in your career. So if you could highlight some of those issues that women and specifically women of Pakistani origin experience within universities and also other workplaces that they work in.
Sure. I think I'm very fortunate to work in the higher education in the UK in a university setting. Things are much more better as compared to the third sector. So for example, अगर आप एक carer हैं, अगर आपके ऊपर आप एक under 18 बच्चे की responsibility है, if you are a parent like me, or if you have a parent, आपके mother या father हैं and you are caring for them, you automatically are entitled to certain benefits. And one of the benefits is caring leave. This is not annual leave, this is not emergency leave, it's a different set of leaves, caring leave. And I'm a very, very big fan of that because that allows me that मेरी जो caring needs हैं वो acknowledge हो रही हैं. That has really helped me facilitate my career journey. And I think also in addition to that, a lot of it comes down to who is your line manager. And ये UK में भी मैं यही बात करती हूँ कि you can have the best policies in the world, you can have everything written down, you can have the best rules and everything, but if your line manager and your relationship is not good, then it's rubbish. So going back to the point कि वहाँ पे जो women को किस तरह facilitate people with caring responsibility, including fathers as well. The first thing is there are regulations and legislations to protect their rights, which I think is a very, very good thing and which I think can be and should be implemented in the Pakistani context. Having said that, it does not mean कि एक leave दे देने से सारे मसाइल हल हो जाते हैं. It also means women and men with caring responsibilities, they have an added emotional burden. Caring comes at a cost. आप में से कितने लोग carers हैं? Everyone probably has a caring responsibility. अपने बच्चे की होगी, नहीं तो अपने father या mother की होगी, या दादा या दादी की होगी, anybody. That comes with its own cost. So to be able to recognize that emotional cost that caring brings, that is really important. Does that answer your question?
I think it does, and we can probably ask Adeela around it. And Adeela, please do highlight some of the lack of facilities which didn't support in your journey while moving ahead with family responsibilities or even workplace environment per se in the university.
Yeah, actually, you're right. It's some of these initiatives are quite new, and in my early part of my career, when I was busy raising my children, aksar jo hai, I wouldn't actually even say I had any children, because I felt that would sometimes go against me. So kisi bhi tarike se, I would either make sure that I had the children taken care of, either through my husband or my family, or I just did something to enable, because I didn't want to highlight myself as not being able to do the job. So very often you would just try to dismiss that and see it as your only problem. I would never admit, and that's my failure really, because in admitting it, it may have helped other people and it may have changed a policy. But at that time, it was too terrifying to actually say that, oh, I haven't got anyone to look after my children. I felt, oh, I must look like a complete failure to them. And, oh, don't give her the job because she's got caring responsibilities. So a lot of my early career, when my children were young, that's exactly what I spent doing. It's much better now because there are much more opportunities and policies. Widening participation made that a real big thing. And so now I'm pleased to be able to support students and other staff, for that matter, who have got caring responsibilities. And actually, it's not such a taboo subject anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, that it should not be taboo. It's okay to have caring responsibilities. It's okay to have children in your audience. They learn so much. We don't need to be so strict about these things. And I think that's something we learn from Pakistan. Because in England, adult life, children life is very, very segregated. In England, you will never see children on a weeknight, school night, out after, say, 6, 7 o'clock. Log bura manate hain ki who brought their child out to a restaurant or something. If there's somebody in a restaurant, everybody will be looking at them. Why is their child here? They're probably irresponsible parents. So, you have to go by that kind of thing. It's a very segregated world. And consequently, you often keep your family life separate and your work life separate, rather than you being the same person. I think it's a bit better now, but I don't think it's completely there, even in the UK. So you can imagine how many lives I actually led. A double life, being Pakistani and British, and double life being a mother and a professional. But then kitni lives hai mere? Ek do aur bhi nikal aayenge later on, aur question kare.
No, I'm just wondering about the juggling bit. And Noshaba, over to you. Too many hats to wear to fend the community members off, and then also pursue your career successfully. So if you could talk a little bit about, and of course you are working in another country now, so some workplace facilities or barriers around there as well, if you can share that.
Brilliant. Yeah, a lot of hats. I mean, as an educator, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right. As an educator, you're always wearing many hats, always. And I think, for the institution that I work for, again, which is a Russell Group institution, quite a prominent university, there are the fair share of challenges there in terms of maintaining that credibility and that rigor of that institution. You represent a brand when you're part of a university like that, and I take that with me everywhere I go. And I have a certain amount of brand loyalty as well, which is why I've kind of stuck with the university. But that doesn't help you as an academic. You've got to have a bit of diversity within your portfolio, and I'm realizing that now. And inshallah, once I complete my PhD, I will be moving on to pastures new, and then again changing my hat, like you say. I think when you're a newbie somewhere and you're new in a higher education institution, I was talking to Professor Jawad about this, that you kind of get labelled as that newbie, and people remember you as a newbie. And even if you're an oldie, even if it's been 4 years since you've been there, you're still the young, new, fresh one. Okay, and that kind of sticks with you. So I wear this newbie hat a lot, but it's not out of choice. It's like it was given to me, and I've got to wear it for now. And some of my experiences now, because I'm in the middle of this now, I'm in the rut of it. I'm facing these challenges as we speak. I have quite a few champions at the university, which really do recognise the work that I do and the progression that I'm trying to make. Which I think is really key. I think it's key to have that champion, to have those mentors that are going to, innovate and push you to be a more successful academic. I think working in the UAE for such an institution, I've kind of seen and been exposed to a very different kind of audience. So again, like Dr. Shafi mentioned earlier, born and raised in Birmingham. Probably I'd say half or maybe 2/3 of Azad Kashmir is probably in Birmingham, right? So the community that I grew up in, completely surrounded by fellow British midwives. The university, very white, middle and upper, class. And I wear this different hat when I'm at home. I'm this kind of a bit more subservient. Subservient is a key word in terms of feminist and gender issues. And at work, at university, and this is again a challenge that I'm facing that I haven't found a solution for yet, that I'm learning from my peers about, is about not carrying in that subservient nature into university, not being this yes person. I haven't got the hang of that yet. We're learning amongst us on this trip that even though my first 2 letters of my name are no, it's the hardest word in my vocabulary. I rarely say no, to be honest with you, and it's quite funny sometimes, the difficulty I have in saying no. And then when I really unpick that and think about why do I find that so difficult, especially when I'm at work, I feel really strongly that as a British Pakistani in a very, very white, and it's very easy, I have no qualms in saying that, and my colleagues at the university would agree, in a very kind of white, upper class, male dominated, in terms of senior leadership, university, I feel like I have to prove myself. I feel like I have to show my worth. I have to work twice as hard because I'm female, and then 4 times as hard because I'm Pakistani. And I have to really show them what I'm made of. And then when they come to me and say, oh, we have this BAME agenda, black and ethnic minority agenda, and we want to encourage BAME leaders. And I say, no, don't make me a leader because I'm from a black and ethnic minority background. Make me a leader because I'm really good at my job and on merit. Right? So multiple hats that I'm wearing all the time. Those hats are always changing. And sometimes, like I said, those hats are kind of given to you and they stick. And that's a challenge for me at the moment.
Thank you so much, Anbreen. I wouldn't say Noshaba now, if that helps. No, I think it's very interesting. Two points that you've raised. One is not being able to say no. And 2, if you are an alumni of an institution and you join there as a young professional, you always remain that chota who can be tasked everything, would be efficient, but will not get an opportunity. And I can say that as a professional who was responsible for setting up a women's university in Pakistan, where there were no female registrars, role models available, or examiners available, or treasurers available. And I feel proud in saying that I groomed young students, the graduates, to be trained as assistant registrars, assistant controller of examination. And 15 years down the lane, when it was time for them to go up the ladder, at a certain point, there was such strong barriers because they were never considered as serious professionals. They were always those young alumni who'd been struggling their way up, doing all odd tasks in addition to their day jobs, and still were not taken as seriously. So a lot of pushing and a lot of support, coaching and mentoring was required to place them so that the rest of the world could see them as professionals. But again, no is something which comes with being an obedient daughter at home, not being able to say no to your seniors, and then to other people whom you see as your peers. So very, very interesting, but very relatable, let me tell you, very much Pakistani. And I would just quickly quote one more example. When I was doing my doctorate in London, I said to my supervisor, like the thesis that I wanted to do, when I said to her that I want to do this, she said, well, this is very much a feminist theoretical framework that you're talking about. And I said, we don't use the word feminist. I'm coming from a very orthodox, conventional family. First girl to be out of Pakistan, unchaperoned. So please, let's not use the word feminist. And she said, then find your own definition. And the second thing that she said was, that whatever work that you are doing, the work that you are trying to pursue, you have to kind of internalize it, and something which we hardly did in our earlier education in Pakistan. But I think again things which were relatable, and my definition for feminism was that this is an effort to improve other women's lives. It wasn't about just holding placards. It wasn't about being an activist only. Being an academic, I think that was something very important, and I can see that when I engage with likes of Madiha and Dr. Adeela here, that we in our own capacities are trying to improve lives of women, whether they're in academia or any other area of work. So coming back to probably Madiha, talking about what would you term as enablers for your success in your career journey? If you could highlight a few, because it would be very interesting for our young audience here to see what can be their role, not just in progressing their careers, but also supporting women in their lives. So if you could talk about women's progression in general, but also about some enablers specifically.
So what I will do is I will talk about the things that have enabled me, that have made my life easy, or that have facilitated me in my journey, ठीक है? And this starts right back to my childhood days. जो मेरे parents ने मुझे ethics दिए, they have stayed with me throughout my life. And it's the basic ethic was adab. अब वो अदब चाहे पेरेंट्स का है, चाहे वो मेहमान का है, चाहे वो बाहर से गुजरने वाले सब्जी वाले का है, वट एवर दैट इज़, टू हैव रिस्पेक्ट, जेन्युइन रिस्पेक्ट. माई फादर वॉज रियली स्ट्रिक्ट ऑन मैनर्स, इखलाक, you know what it's like, right? जो बच्चे यहाँ बैठे हुए हैं, I'm sure you can relate to that. So till today I cannot think of that, I cannot even have an argument with my mother. It's not possible. It's not possible. And we can have a discussion but no argument. Adab, hard work and dedication. That was the second ethic and the value that our parents gave us. आप excellent results prove करें, hard work करें, and then Allah Ta'ala will reward you. That was the second hard work ethic that has really helped me throughout my life. The third thing I want to acknowledge is you can have all the best intentions in the world, you can have all the best tools in the world, but it is not possible to be able to progress until you have the support of your family, your immediate family in particular. And for a person like me who migrated from one country to another country, completely new, set up my life from zero, and by zero I mean मुझे जाके वहाँ पे तकिया भी ख़रीदना था, मुझे जाके वहाँ पे कंबल भी ख़रीदना था, मुझे जाके वहाँ पे जॉब भी ढूंढनी थी. In that situation, to have the support from your life partner, from your spouse, that is absolutely critical. And I'm a very fortunate person that my life partner has supported me, has believed in me, and has facilitated my journey. And I say I'm privileged because I'm very aware this is not the case in a lot of the situations. So ये जो 2-3 enablers मेरे हैं, एक तो वो values जो मुझे मेरे parents ने दी for hard work and not settling for less than excellent. वो जो मुझे मेरी manager ने कहा था तुम्हारी English अच्छी है, तुम्हारी grammar अच्छी है, it's not by accident. It's because my parents worked that ethic into me. And the last thing I want to add is when you have the platform, you pull up people who are beneath you. Not beneath you, sorry, below you. Because I think it is the responsibility of every woman and every man that when they get the opportunity, when they get the platform, they make place for the next one to follow suit. दूसरे का जर्नी आसान करें, वो जो इशफाक अहमद साहब कहते हैं दूसरों के लिए आसानियाँ करें, अल्लाह ताला आपके लिए आसानियाँ करेगा. That is really important. To be able to pass on that knowledge, that wisdom, that expertise to the people, to your colleagues, that is really, really important. And that has been my enabler as well. So 3 things I think I've outlined.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And over to you, Adeela, if you would like to add on something to
I will.
list.
I agree with every single part of your list, so I won't repeat that because for myself it was the same is the ethics and what your parents instill in you, and we've been talking a lot about that. But what I will also develop on that is also yourself as well, is and recognizing that sometimes when things don't go well for you, and बुरा वक्त आता है, that is also an enabler. At the time, it sometimes feels like this is a barrier, it's a problem, इसको कैसे overcome करना है, oh that's it now, अब कुछ भी नहीं हो सकता, that kind of thing. So, and it feels like that at the time, but actually every time you have an adversity, that's an opportunity within that actually you can make things different. And I really believe that many of the things that I have done have not come to me as, like you've said, you've had to undergo lots of adversity, difficulties in order for that to happen. And that's been the case professionally and career-wise. So actually my enablers are all the challenges and difficulties, or majburis, whatever you want to call it. Those are the things that have been the enablers. But actually it's your own drive, and that drive comes from the work ethic, is what makes you go and propels you forward. And an interesting point, actually, I suppose you all know Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, even the young ones. Hillary Clinton. Anyway, she was driving along doing her campaigning, and she drove along, and they came across some petrol station or something in what was her hometown, near her hometown. And वो petrol station के अंदर गए, and it turned out to be a man that she knew. And then somebody came out and said, जो उसके staff हैं उन्होंने कहा, oh, you know that man? And she said, yes, he was my first boyfriend. He's my first date. And her aide said to her, oh my goodness, just imagine if you had married him, and you might have been in the petrol station. And she turned around and said to him, she said, no, he would have been the president. Which actually illustrated that, no, absolutely not. He's not going to drive my journey. I would have probably driven his. But it shows how you yourself are an enabler for other people, and actually the difficulties and adversities that you face are actually in disguise. वो कहते हैं ना, Allah Ta'ala better करेगा, and all the other things that we have and we say to each other to comfort one another. Actually, there's some truth in there. So it helps you to learn. Often people go for Umrah and they say, oh, वहाँ दवा जाके पूरी हो जाएगी, ये हो जाएगा, वो हो जाएगा. Actually, it's you in a different space, a different time, different headspace that enables you to find solutions to your problems. And yeah, God has enabled you by bringing you out of your comfort zone, out of the space that you're normally in, to enable you to think outside of your own box. And those are the kind of things that are enablers. So remember, you're in the center of that circle. And that's really quite important. So shall I hand over to...
Yes, Noshaba,
Noshaba?
please. Thank you. Noshaba, if you could add on to the list, it would be really good.
Of things that have enabled me to be in the position that I am. Again, I think I referred to it earlier as well. It's having a champion, and I think that's really important. And I do have a couple of champions at the institution that I work for. Again, like I said, that recognise the input that I have and the impact. It's not just about input; it's about impact as well. And I think that's super important. And then I also alluded to earlier my parents, right? So I cannot talk about things that have enabled me and people that have enabled me without referring to my parents, my mother and my father, who've again not treated me differently as a girl, to my brothers, and they've really given me that pedestal and that ability to carry out what I'm going to do at university. So I'd say, in a nutshell, those are those two things. Having a champion that really does believe in you, in your professional life and in your personal life, having that support from your family. And when you've got both, the world really is your oyster. And it sounds a little bit cliched, but why can't you do what you want to do? Of course, you can push yourself.
Perfectly true for I think all of us. A little bit about leadership opportunities. So I'm really curious to know about University of Birmingham. You worked in Qatar as well, and now in the Dubai campus. So what exactly is the physical situation in terms of having women in leadership positions on campus, in terms of role models, in terms of career pathways? Where do you see that there is an opportunity of leadership in that particular campus? And also, if you want to backtrack it to University of Birmingham, if you could share something around that.
Yeah. Relating it to my background, I'm the even though Dubai is so culturally diverse, loads of Pakistanis, Indian nationals as well there. I'm the only British Pakistani in my department there. I'm the only British Pakistani in the Dubai campus.
Really?
And I'm the only British Pakistani in the School of Education that I'm working for as well in the UK. So if I look at the Edgbaston campus as well, back home. So I think that's quite significant. And it's something that the university as an institution, as have many universities in the UK now, recognised about female leadership, but also leadership, I mentioned earlier, the BAME agenda, black and ethnic minority, increasing leaders from that kind of diaspora. So I think those kinds of things definitely help highlight the issue. But again, it's got to be down to you and wanting to progress on your own merits. And that has been fraught with quite a few challenges for me, and I'm still facing a couple challenges. In terms of developing as a leader, if you are too bogged down with things that take you away from those opportunities, like you referred to earlier, Mariam, the other things, I'm quite tech savvy, I'm quite digitally kind of aware, and my other counterparts may not be as much. So they might call on me for a bit of help and assistance. That's not really the kind of route that I want to be going down, right? I don't really want to be tech support. I am an academic after all, even though an early career one. So I think those kinds of things are really key, but because it's important to notice that some of these things can become barriers to progression. I am not afraid of rejection. And I am, again, I have no qualms in admitting this in this space. I went for promotion only just in January, knowing that I wouldn't get it, knowing that I wasn't ready yet, and there's some things that I still needed to do. Because I do believe that when you're in a role, and if it's a new program that you're leading or a new initiative, for example, international qualified teacher status is something I'm only just leading, to have demonstrated impact, you need to have done it for at least 2 years, right? 1 year through and then review and then 1 year again. So I knew that when I was going for promotion, through the academic promotion kind of process, I wasn't going to get it. But I did that on purpose. A, because I wanted to be seen and heard. B, because I wanted them, as in my seniors, my colleagues, my head of school, to know that I want to get promoted. So that was really important for me. And then C, I wanted to get a bit of feedback because I knew that I wasn't ready yet, but I wanted to make sure they knew, okay, this is your feedback. Now this is what you need to do next time when you apply. And I wanted it from them verbatim. I wanted it from them in writing. Because then when I've got that, and if I do those things and apply again, then I'll be in a position, inshallah, if I do achieve leadership opportunities and move from assistant to associate professor, for example, then I can say, well, you asked and I did, right? So that's my kind of evidence base, and that's the approach that I'm taking to try and gain a bit of leadership. And also the good thing, which I think is worth mentioning, is if they then tell me, my colleagues tell me, focus on this and not on that. You're doing too much of these things, Nosh. They're taking you away from the real meat. These are the things you need to focus on. I'm going to use that as leverage. I'm admitting it on here. I'm going to say, well, actually, I don't have the capacity to do X, Y, and Z right now because I'm working on this because it will get me this kind of output and result. So that's my strategy. I've revealed all my secrets now. I hope they're not watching.
That's working. I wish you luck, and I in most of the cases it does work. But I think I'll pick up on your point around putting yourself forward for a promotion, a notion probably unheard of for most of the women who are working in higher education in Pakistan. Even if they're short of one publication, they would never apply. Whereas, and I'm saying this from purely personal experience as the registrar, we used to do recruitments, and you would get applications from male colleagues who would be like short of 3 papers or short of 6 months on their service record, but they would still apply, whereas like women in similar situations would not apply because they would just consider themselves not coming up to the requirements. So
something to add here.
yeah, please. And also please do and please do share the leadership opportunities that you've had.
This is exactly what I was going to talk about, and UK में there are 25,000 professors. ठीक है? 25,000. Pretty much that number. White, black, Chinese, Asian, whatever. Out of those 25,000, there are only 300 female professors. Roughly around that figure. Plus minus. Out of that 300 professors, only 25 or maybe less than, they are black. And by black, I mean ethnic minorities, not white, right? So, let alone Pakistanis, women are facing barriers anywhere, even in the Western world. ये हमें academia की research बताती है. Of course, it is a very long conversation. We are talking about thought process when we talk about removing barriers for women. But what I want to say is this challenge is not specific to Pakistan or to Pakistani women. It is common amongst all women. Of course, it is amplified for women from a Pakistani heritage. Sorry, I have so much to say. I forgot what the other part of the question was.
The leadership opportunities that you have.
Having said that, going back to enablers, a lot of that also goes. Ireland में थी, I was giving a training to some surgeons, female surgeons, and I was asking them, what are your barriers? And you will be surprised to know they are surgeons. They are female surgeons, and their biggest barrier was impostor syndrome. Yeah. Are you familiar with impostor syndrome? Which is basically that you do not have the confidence in yourself that you have been selected to do a job. Okay? You think, actually, people will find out I'm a misfit. People will find out I do not belong here. I have stumbled into the VIP room by accident. This is imposter syndrome. And these are female white surgeons we are talking about. They said to me, because of imposter syndrome or imposter feelings, they do not apply for promotions. Yeah. They do not feel confident, and that's such a shame. अगर आप ये female white professors ये बात कर रही हैं तो आप ये समझे कि हमारे क्या challenges हैं फिर. And finally, talking about leadership opportunities, knowing all of these barriers, knowing all of these limitations, knowing all of these stats, I still very headstrongly I have taken so many initiatives using the work ethic that my parents gave me to create opportunities for myself. मैंने खुद जाके अपने लिए opportunity create की, and the biggest example is at UCL, University College London, I set up a network for 12,000 staff members. The network was called Parents and Carers Network. Remember I was telling you I'm a parent and my inspiration goes back to my daughter. So I created that leadership opportunity for myself. I became the chair. I chaired that for about 8 to 9 years. I went on to do wonderful things. The network won many awards at UCL level, regionally, nationally, and that is how I became a leader within that sphere. And when people ask me, where are you from? My direct answer is, I'm from Pakistan. And that is the most proud moment for me to tell them, I'm from Pakistan and I'm leading this network. So welcome to join, please. Does that respond to your question?
Yes, thank you very much. Very inspiring. I hope it's inspiring for our audience as well. And Adeela, if you could also quickly share a couple of leadership opportunities.
After that, can we just go to the next question? It's all been very well answered. But if you really want me to say something, it is about creating opportunities, and there's much research out there that suggests that women do not go for promotion at the same level, anywhere near the same level for men. So that's a known fact world over as well, and interesting that it's the case here. Yeah. Too as well. So in terms of leadership opportunities, again, for me, leadership opportunities came through, again, from adversities and often learning to say no. And I remember having a similar experience to you, where when I was earlier in my career, and they would say, oh, can you do this and can you do that? And in the end, I just said, I am not your odd job person. And actually, it stopped it straight away. Just saying that, say I'm not doing all the odd jobs. I'm just not doing it. And actually, I suddenly realised the sky didn't fall down by me saying that. Dunia wahi ki wahi hai, lekin maine na keh di. And that actually gave me the confidence to realise that actually nothing will go wrong. And being a psychologist, you see and hear about many different types of people all over the world doing different things and so on. You think that's not really that different a thing to do, which is to say no. And actually it did change things for me. And the change was, ये नहीं कि उन्होंने मुझे और job देना बंद कर दिया, लेकिन ये कि I now knew that I had a voice and that I could use it and I could elevate it, and I've never looked back since. So that was quite a turning point for me, actually, earlier in my career, and it enabled me to create opportunities, because then I also realized I now work on the principle is no one can take away what I've got already, so what have I got to lose? So that's the principle I work on, and so I just go for more and push. मुझे ये भी पता है कोई पीछे नहीं होता जब आपने काम बैठना होता है आपको कहना पड़ता है ज़रा साइड मारेंगे तो खुद ही आपको करना पड़ता है कि move out of the way. And I again learned that from not just academia but from my I hate to admit this in public, my political life as well. I stood for MP way back over a decade ago, and I learned much from that too, that actually nobody and that's a very white British upper class elite arena, and for that to have any say, you have got to be headstrong, you've got to push yourself forward, and actually just say you've arrived. And when you do, it's surprising, they do move over. So try it sometime and you will surprise yourself. But because they expect you not to, so they don't move. And when they see that you can and you do and you will, maybe they do it out of shock, or whatever it is, but they all move out of the way, and suddenly you've not only gained confidence for yourself, but you've also told them that actually we as Pakistani women actually come with quite a lot, and we can do quite a lot. So, I would encourage all of you, and that's just not for Pakistani women, actually, I'd say that for Pakistani men who also struggle in Britain as well to get the best jobs, the top jobs, and for promotion. So I would encourage any British Pakistani men and any young men who we've got sitting here today that, propel yourself forward, be confident in yourself and your abilities, and people will be surprised. And maybe you'll surprise yourself too.
Thank you. I'm going to be a little disruptor here and ask an out-of-course question, which is something that I came across when I was doing my doctoral research on life stories of women professors in Pakistan. And I had the privilege of interviewing a lot of vice chancellors. Well, I wouldn't say a lot. There are very few women vice chancellors back then, like I'm talking about 10 years back. But also deans and head of the departments. The first thing that kind of hit me, and I have a whole section on psychological impact of doing that research in my thesis, was that I was interviewing these women who I saw as role models. As a young professional in higher education, I thought they were brilliant, successful women with so many degrees to their credit, so many publications to their credit. They had robes which were filled with medals, and Professor Hudba would be familiar with some of them who were highly qualified in universities like Quaid-e-Azam University. But they all, something which was common was they did not see their success as success. It was more like a day job, something if they were placed in a certain department, they needed to do it. If they had become professor and a tenured professor, it wasn't seen as a success. It was just a course of a journey. And interestingly, what they saw as success were their students doing well. And I thought that was very, very strange because, as as a young professional, if I got promoted in a university, it meant my success, but also my family's success, my colleagues' success. But I could see that they did not see that as a symbol of success. So if you could quickly, in maybe 1 minute each, share something around the element of enjoying that success that you've had in your career, and then feeling good about it, and kind of using that in your mentoring or your coaching or your careers per se.
Oh, I have many such moments. I'm trying to scan and see which one is the best one. I mean, I suppose I'll talk about once when at my own university, where with regards to promotion and development, and I actually challenged not getting a promotion and questioned their systems and their processes. और उन्होंने एक बड़ा सा investigation शुरू कर दिया. to find out an independent investigation, find out what had happened. To maine kaha, karo. And once they'd done their, produced their report, I went through the report line by line, and I trashed every single part of it. And there was a whole panel of them there, and that was a very enjoyable moment for me. And the reason I felt able to do that, because I realized they're not the expert in this. Ye to bahar se aaya hua hai. The expert is me.
Yeah.
The situation is mine. So who are they? So I used that and thought, I'm the expert, they're separate, and that is what gave me the empowerment. And I think recognizing that you are the expert in you
Yes.
is a key thing.
Yeah.
So you may not be an expert in anything else, but you're an expert in you.
Yeah.
So I think that was very empowering
Thank
for me.
you.
And I enjoyed it.
Brilliant.
And their faces, and I, of course, won the case.
I would also like to very quickly tell you a personal story. Like I was telling you, when I was at UCL, University College London, I was chairing this fantastic network. It really gained popularity, won multiple national awards. So because of that privilege, I was invited to different meetings with very senior people, people who are decision making, people who have an impact on the policies. And that was a platform where I used that privilege to become the voice of underrepresented, whether that was parents, whether that was carers, whether that was women. So to be able to be on a platform where I can influence a decision, I can influence a policy, I can use my voice to amplify the voice of others is a moment of personal success for me. And that always reflects, because when people tell me that what you said at that point on that platform actually made a difference, that is really, really personal for me. Or mujhe ye lagta hai ki this is what I want to teach my daughter as well, that when you get that opportunity, like this opportunity, to have a voice, then use that carefully. That is an opportunity and you must do justice to it. Do not waste that opportunity. It's a very broader one, but I hope people get the gist of it. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I guess one of my most recent, and I'd probably say the biggest success in my higher education career so far, is putting a bid in for this new qualification called International Qualified Teacher Status, which is something that the Department of Education in the UK have launched. I put a bid in on behalf of the University of Birmingham and was successful. And there were only 6 universities outside of the UK worldwide that was selected to be part of this pilot, and we are one of them. And I'd like to use that opportunity and that privilege to lead IQTS in the UAE to eventually, inshallah, bring that to Pakistan and open up opportunities for very intelligent, distinguished, successful teachers in Pakistan to gain that international qualification so they too can have access to it. And that for me is a huge success.
Thank you so much. And I think that brings us to 4:15. So if we have any questions from the audience before I kind of wrap up the conversation.
It's clear that the 3 of you have done brilliantly in Britain. And my congratulations to you for that. But as I look at my own field and adjoining fields, in science, mathematics, engineering, medicine, there are very, very few Pakistanis to be seen over there. They're almost absent from UK's academia, the higher positions anyway. And if you compare with Indians, the Indians are miles above us, as are the Chinese. Now, earlier you spoke about this feeling of victimhood, and I got a sense that you were also talking about the ghettoization, the feeling that we are that we need to close in on ourselves. So, don't you think it is the cultural conservatism that is at the root of Pakistanis not doing so well in the UK? They have all the opportunities. Here we can complain that we don't have enough resources, this and that. But over there, they have all the resources that are available to the whites. And yet they're not doing well at all.
I couldn't agree with you more, actually. We do, British Pakistanis do We do. I think it's absolutely true that our cultural heritage that we have tried to hold on to, which is not unusual for many immigrant communities. When they go to another country, they try to hold on to their heritage, and in their quest to hold on to the heritage, it often happens at the expense of not integrating, not taking advantage of opportunities, and actually looking inwards rather than outwards. So you will find that many British Pakistanis in Britain are more Pakistani than you might imagine here. And often the communities here have moved on, but our communities are still like they were 50 years ago. And it's their quest to hold on to that's held them back. And their quest to live literally in very close-knit communities, which has meant that the outside can't get in and the inside can't look out. So this has actually disabled our communities quite considerably. So I mean, there's a lot of work going on in this field, and I myself am part of that work in England. But we've got a long way to go, because not least because we've got Little Pakistan, Chota Pakistan and Chota Pakistan in Bradford and Birmingham respectively. But the downside of it is that we have not fully benefited. So if those communities had been here, they would have probably developed further than they would have. They might have financially be better off in many ways, but they haven't developed or benefited from the opportunities that could be available to them had they just looked upward and outward. They had to have looked upward and outward to even make the journey there. But something happened when they got there, and it's largely geographical locations and the very close-knit communities and the residences that has actually not paid dividends at all. So, we get what we call in Britain white flight, which means actually that when immigrants come into a particular location, you get white flight, which is white communities leave, and you get more and more Pakistani, Asian or black communities coming in, and it becomes what you just said, ghettoized in many ways. It loses income. They don't get people spending, the councils don't spend in those areas, so it goes further and further and further and down. Then it impacts on the psyche of the people that live there. And before you know it, you've got the situation that we are actually in now. We are now, our generation and perhaps the next generation, going to have to work extra hard to actually disentangle some of the problems we embedded when we first arrived in the first couple of decades. And it is a huge, huge problem for our communities going forward, because British Pakistanis achieve one of the lowest, academically achieve one of the lowest out of all the immigrant communities. And Pakistan Indians, one of the highest. Something's going wrong, and we can't ignore the fact that it could be our culture, it could be our mindset that is holding us back. We mustn't pretend and just say, we are wonderful people, we know that, but there's something in our culture that is not enabling us to make it good for our generations. And we've got to stand up and say that's the case.
Thank you for that explanation. So you talked about the geographical. There's also the fact that the British Pakistanis are the only community that generation after generation have continued to marry their cousins from back home. So we've been importing cousins for marriage who often have been coming from without an education. So we have sort of perpetuated that through some of the customs and practices as well. Going back to geography, Pakistanis in America, for example, they don't have those geographical issues of going to the mill towns like Bradford, Birmingham, Manchester. They're actually spread out all over America, and so they integrate more. So I think those are the other factors that we have observed. So thank you for letting me answer.
No, thank you, because you also come from similar background and you have a lot to share. So if you have any other questions.
Thank you so much for your talk, and it was so lovely to hear from your experiences. My question to you is, for the audience that are here and are watching virtually and are wanting to learn from yourselves, not so much in a mentoring capacity, but every now and again, am I on the right path? Is this what I should be doing? And maybe you sharing those skills, because I don't know how to say no either. But how's the best? I'll try it when I go back to work. What's the best way of connecting with people like yourselves through Upsign? So people are able to sort of not just leave this as a talk that they listen to today, but actually work on it as a base.
I think a lot of that goes back to taking initiative. A lot of that, in fact, for anything at all, really. People who are listening virtually, people who are here in the room, I think you have to take the initiative to find out more about a country, about its culture, about its history, whatever that might look like. One of the easiest ways is to make friends, to watch their TV programs with subtitles on. That's how you learn the language. That's how you learn the accents. And of course, the world has come leaps and bounds now. There are so many digital platforms. Upsign, which Jawad will talk about in a minute, is one fantastic platform for people to join. It's a network. It's a global think tank of people from all over the world. We are a group of researchers, policymakers, decision makers, practitioners, etc. There's so much of mutual learning to take place, to be able to find out about each other's works, to be able to find, and there are lots of Pakistanis in Britain who are doing fantastic work, despite all the barriers that we have spoken about. So to be able to reach out to them, to chat to them, that is one initiative that everybody can take. Noshaba, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment that kind of links to what you've said, and also Professor Hoodboy as well. You know, I was joking with my dad about this, about how many Asian newsreaders there are, but they were Indian. A lot of them were Indian, British newsreaders, news forecasters, a lot in the media. But the Lord Mayor of London is a Pakistani, right? There are loads of British Pakistanis in the political cabinet. So in the UK, there are quite a few quite prominent people there. So it seems to be we're doing really well there, but not in academia and, you know, research, etc. And I just want to add that for me personally, connecting with like-minded people and people that I found as mentors, how did I do it? I did it, like Madiha said, through my own initiative, but also platforms like LinkedIn, etc., are brilliant at connecting people. I found that really, really useful. And perhaps people can take that away. You know, look us up on LinkedIn, add me, connect with us, and we can carry on this journey beyond this.
Thank you. And I think it's very important. One of the researchers that I was referring to earlier, which British Council did in universities to see what was happening in terms of research in Pakistani universities. A lot of them were not part of any networks on digital platforms, or were not aware of opportunities that existed in terms of resources out there. But I also think that your point is very valid in terms of it's almost 1.2 million Pakistani diaspora in UK, one of the bigger ones. But the proportion when it gets to senior position lowers down. A lot of it has to do with the fact that when in 60s the immigration was open for other countries to come in, a lot of men came to UK from Pakistan, and they did not have their families with them or women, and they went into labor jobs to begin with. So I think your generation is now at that stage where you have another generation behind you which has had success in careers. And I'm saying this as an observer, but also as a researcher who's worked in the philanthropy area in UK. We've done some research around there. So a lot of resources, but how much investment is actually made in the academic excellence of their children or their grandchildren is still something which is now in let's say last 7 or 8 years it has taken strength. But it wasn't the case, which is very different from US, where you had young doctors immigrating to US and their children getting that edge over the other immigrant communities, and they kind of moving up the ladder much more quickly compared to other communities which are coming from West Africa or other parts of the world. So I think that also contributes. So if we are at 3 minutes to end this, if there are any other questions, I would be more than happy to ask. Otherwise, I have just something that I've picked up, keywords. I think persistence comes out as something amongst the conversation that we've had. Academic excellence, supportive families, fathers, spouses, mothers. I would really would have wanted, and maybe that's another topic, what roles your mothers have actually played in this journey. But maybe we'll have another opportunity to do that. But also role models, and you've mentioned some, and something that needs to be looked. I have a mic. Oh, sorry, it's echoing. And then also something around cultural capital. I think it has come out in conversation, but the cultural capital that you had growing up as an immigrant child or as a BME community within UK, how that benefited and how that, like, I think we've talked about not being able to say no. I remember doing odd jobs when we started the university, which included actually sometimes making arrangements for students to have beddings in the hostel. So I went out and bought pillows like in hundreds and beds in hundreds. But now that I look back, I think that was a different kind of learning experience. If I had stayed in my role and said, it's not my job to go and shop for setting up a university to buy beds or pillows, I wouldn't have, nobody would have kicked me out of the job for that. But I now, when I look back, I think that's a huge opportunity. And you've said the same, that the kind of expertise that you developed doing all those odd jobs, I think that has really helped. One thing, which is my last statement, is I picked it up from you, Madiha, non-confrontational attitude. And I think that's also something very, very key. And I'm not saying that you don't have to have a voice, but I think sometimes you have to choose your battles. If you are making a journey, you can't fight. And I think as a woman, it's very, very difficult to fight on all grounds. So we as women in academia, and I hope you support us on that response as well, that sometimes you have to choose your battles, and you have to make sure that you don't waste your energies on battles which are distracting, and focus on battles which are important, which sits well with your values and your ethics and all of that. So not compromising on principles, but at the same time just making sure that you don't waste the limited resource that you have to move forward. Thank you very much for, yes, please.
Since you brought up battles, so I sort of specialize in that. And I have noticed that men in general, but women in particular, shy away from confrontational situations or situations where they have to take principled stands. And that is something I've noticed throughout my career, that women do not fight, at least in Pakistan. They do not put up fights about academic principles, about academic quality. And that is something I think is very key to making yourself heard, making a statement, and basically putting yourself in the foreground.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter whether you win or lose. Some you win, some you lose, but you have to take principled stands, and that is where I think that women like to keep themselves in the background. That has been my observation here at least in the Pakistani context.
Yeah, I think which is definitely true for some of the experience that I had while I was doing research. But thank you very much, ladies. It was brilliant talking to you, and thank you very much for being such a patient but engaged audience. Thank you, Dr. Saab, for hosting us here at Black Hole. Thank you very much.